A sunny winter's day in Seattle is a perfect day to go antique shopping. First, we're going to stop by my antique mall and refill the space. Then we're going to go to a special antique mall you haven't seen yet.
Well, I have spent the better part of today at Lander Street Vintage because they have a sale coming and I wanted to be ready, and I have never packed the booth so full. Everybody in this incredible store has been restocking. The sale will be St. Patrick's weekend, the 14th, 15th, and 16th. We'll come back and look at my space at the end, but first, because I got done early, let's go shopping.
We are headed through downtown Seattle to the other side of downtown in the Fremont district where there's a funky antique mall.
The train depot is the old brick tower. That is a faithful copy of Campanile in Italy. Behind the white building with the peak is Smith Tower, which was the tallest building west of the Mississippi for many years. We're going to go through the business district.
Vertebrae is a very famous sculpture by British sculptor Henry Moore.
And yes, we go right under the Space Needle to get to this place. Well, Jimi Hendrix famously sung about crosstown traffic in Seattle, but it wasn't too bad today. We're already to the Fremont Bridge.
It's been everything from a hippie enclave to the home of Adobe Computer, but the Fremont district has always had a sense of cool.
You can take a psychic journey in Fremont.
You can see and even dress the statue of Vladimir Lenin. When the Eastern Wall fell, a man bought this to put in front of his Slovakian restaurant, and then he died, and Fremont inherited it.
The rocket came off an old surplus store in downtown. Fremont likes to preserve cool stuff from around the rest of the city. Like the neighborhood itself, Fremont Vintage Mall is about the hip and the cool.
You can get the feel just looking at the paintings of the old celebrities on the staircase down. All of this is subterranean on 2 levels below street grade.
And first thing, Pyrex everywhere you look. As soon as you get in the door here, there's one interesting piece here. This enameled pan, which I have not seen before. Ceramite, definitely from the same era as Catherine Home. Very cute, right out of the 70s, $48. The $10 case, this has been here for a long time. I like the little bag on the top there. Dorothy Thorpe did not do silver fade, she did silver bands. So there's a chance that this is Dorothy Thorpe. I have the tumblers that match these old fashions in the bale here. They're asking $110. They're claiming these is Dorothy Thorpe too, but I'm not so sure. This is a really fun Pepsi soda tray from about 1960. It shows Coney Island. Doesn't that all just look like fun? And it's got the single dot, which lets you know it's after 1955. $45 on that. Second World War tin here with the battleship on the top. That's the USS Idaho. The Dunlap, the West Virginia. That was one of the ones that sunk at Pearl Harbor. There's the Arizona, which was ill-fated. So this came out actually before the Second World War, probably in the last year or two leading up to it. And it's only priced at $26. It originally contained Loose Wiles biscuits. I always thought that was a funny name for a company. They got the memo on the mugs. It used to be the only mugs we really looked for were the donkeys and the Republican elephants by Francoma, but now, of course, we look at all sorts of mugs. Words are words, 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 as the Tom Tom Club said in 1981, which is about the time that the first love affair with things having generic lettering on them was in, and here's a bunch of pieces from that era. I don't know Lois Becker to be an important artist, but I love the droopy-eyed look of that owl.
Skippy was actually an Australian kangaroo and joey that became popular in Germany.
Ryan Blythe is a local Seattle ceramicist who did this crazy orange and green duck, priced at $75. And behind is a nice Raymore Batosi Rimini black and blue ashtray. Some fun vintage rhinestones here from the 60s and 70s, it appears. The butterfly is fun. That's always a neat shape. But I really like this one with the glass leaves, the necklace there. There's something appealing and soft about that. They also have a good mesh purse there for $85. That looks like a Mandalian. And then several of the cat's eye glasses, vintage ones. You can have the lenses redone in those to your prescription. I see why they say no drinks on the furniture. This has been nicely refinished. It's Lane with the dental molding. Always like that dovetail look. This one's priced at $245. A lesser known but still really fun Franciscan pattern from the 60s is Echo. And here's an example of it there, the tripart relish. They're asking $40. You'll see a lot of vintage jewelry and a lot of vintage and resale fashion in this store. It's always been a thing here. I like the hats, of course, and look at those great heads on the hangers. This is a Stetson pattern. I have always assumed that this was by Ben Seibel. I don't know that for a fact, but Pyrex did mugs that went along with this that you'll see from time to time. Now, this jewelry is all fun, and it's not brand new, but it's not really vintage either. These are reprints, but they are fun. They have a lot of them from old movies. These are interesting. Album cover paint swatches based on albums. Purple Rain. Shields and Arnell. Yes, I remember. They were the most popular mimes on television. That was a hard thing to do, too, considering that, you know, they didn't talk much. Dynamite was a magazine aimed at kids my age to try to make us understand what they thought was cool in pop culture for us. There's always been a big vinyl section here as well. They know what's valuable and what isn't. Over here we have things that price a little higher, like the Ventures. This section is part of Jive Time Records. They're a local record store that's been around a long time. The thing that has always been true here is it is a mix of real vintage and retro. Retro to me is anything that looks old, is fun, is based on some vintage design, like Fantasia, but is not actually old. On the one hand, it's cool because it gets young people interested. On the other hand, I'd like them to know the difference between old and retro. Now this is truly vintage. That is right out of the mid-70s. Polyester, bicentennial colors, and floor length, because hemlines were long. This clown. I know a lot of you folks are not into clowns, but you got to give this one credit. That's pretty cute. $48, made in the 70s. And they have the entire Zodiac gold glass set with the original advertising and the original box for $78.98. I've picked these up before. These are Jean Mercier powder jars for the dresser by Villery and Bach, part of the Les Ballons line. These should date to about the 1990s. And then we come across some things that are true antique. And one of them is this machinist cabinet here. These are great for small collections of anything from shells to jewelry, or machine tools as were originally intended. Inside is this cool thing from an old hardware store, a star nail cup. This would have been a hardware parts sorter from a store or to be used in your garage. $98 from about the 1920s. And then this is neat. This is the University of Washington, an old beanie from the 1950s. Pocket knives. I'd like to point out the military one there, the U.S. Marine Corps. There's another one below that's textured. No bone handles on those, just straight metal. Vietnam era, probably by Camillus of New York. Earlier Star Wars pieces are definitely collectible and sell for more. There's the land speeder with 2 people riding in it. Well, people. 2 critters of some sort. This is neat too. James Bond Assault Game. This was redone in the 70s. Originally, this came out in the early 60s. Vintage Ray-Bans are starting to come back again. Ray-Bans seem to come in and out of style about every 20 or 30 years, so we're about due for a renaissance. This looks like a 1980s color block for $85. More clowns. You know what? Somebody ought to just go ahead and do the horror thing with the clowns, because there's lots of fun clowns around and everyone's afraid of them. Only $38 for the Murano glass one, $48 for the old chalkware from the 40s, and the Sierra Vista cookie jar, which looks a little drunk but not as drunk as the McCoy version, is $79. And here's what a kit purse might look like when you put it together. This one is nice and clean and $48 from the late 60s. They also have a pattern I like down here. These are Vernon kilns and only $10 and $12 each. That's a pretty good price. I might pick these up. They don't have the mark on the bottom, but this is Tickle Pink. They did the same pattern in the reverse colors, where the blue blocks were big and the pink was the accent, and that's called Heavenly Blue. Metal beer trays from the 70s are definitely collectible. I used to be able to pick these up and price them around $25. I don't see the price on this one, but I don't see them cheaply anymore, so I'm betting it's not in my budget. Yellow isomat. The Swedish dish set, this tricorn, is neat just because of the shape. There's the mark on that. We do see Scandinavian things that you don't see in a lot of other parts of the country here because there's such a big Scandinavian population in Seattle. Aw, somebody bought the Putnam Fateless die tin. That is a neat little cabinet. It has little shelves inside where they would have kept the die. And that's a great 1930s graphic. I wonder what Jen paid for it. Nice find. And here is a cocktail shaker that is vintage that I don't see very often with the drunken men in tuxedos spilling about. That's really fun. $32 is not bad. It is actually from probably 1950 rather than the 30s, but it is a cool piece for the price. Speaking of Swedish modern, here is a 1950s vase, only $18. It has the signature etched. I think I've got to get that. Well, if you like funky glasses, they've got a bunch of them here for you. Heart shapes in blue, some old cat's eyes with marcasite, some newer ones. That's a fun grouping. Wow, look at that one there. And then back there, the Holt Howard Cozy Kitties with the Mewers for $85. Seattle World's Fair glasses, my prices are better, so I'm glad that I was able to get mine cheap. These are a style I always liked with the wasted beer glass shape and the different attractions shown around the edge. $18 each on those two. Olympia beer, these wildlife ones are really money now, $125. Neat Asian embroidered outfit there. That looks like a Norwegian sweater for $225. Various stereo equipment. I like the Heath kit. Now, Heath kit was something I think you got at Radio Shack, but they have a good look. And sometimes, if the kits were good, they were pretty good stereos. And here it says they are restored for $140. Pretty fearsome lion here. Nutcracker. I haven't seen the lion before. You usually see squirrels and things. That one's priced at $62. Again, a lot of this stuff is retro. I see Jonathan Adler. I see a lot of things that have the look, but they don't actually have age. The wicker does, though. And that's a pretty good price on sale for $135. This space has cool lighting, a lot of 70s lighting, pendant lamps, and swag lamps. Cute screen print glass set here from the 50s. $60, those are Hazel Atlas. There is a name for this puffy fabric in 3D. I cannot remember what it was. Maybe one of our viewers will remind me. This is a fun fall scene for $40 out of the 70s. Erte became very popular shortly before his death because of Deco revival interest in the 1980s. This was done in 1982 after an exhibition of his in San Francisco. It's priced at $120 now. And then here we have some Rexall art, $48. Footed cake plate there is Jeanette Constellation from about 1970 for $55. Nice 1970s Mexican leather, tooled leather bag with the Aztec calendar on it. And yes, there's a younger clientele here, so there is interest in this sort of thing, as well as the lounge lizard loafers that the original owner of those magazines probably had too. $165 out of the 70s. These metal ship lamps are fun. When you light them up, they have colored tubes, a bluish green and a red, and all of the color comes out of the portholes. This is a cool piece with the Native American beading. Looks like it's priced at $150. I'd say that's also from about 1970. The stark black and brass and white of the 1980s. A lot of people did these interiors around 1980, and they've got the real stuff here. This is a steel case swivel chair. Steel case is still made in Michigan today, but they're not making these anymore. $295. The mirror top coffee table, an 80s must. That one is priced at $450, along with the side table at one price. And this shows how you can use a brass hall table from the 80s as a vanity if you choose. And this is an 80s classic too, with these side tables that swivel. so you can move them out of your way when you wanted to get up from the table. Priced at $6.95. Visa and MasterCard, we take them for granted now. There was a time people did not have credit cards like this because they hadn't figured out how to work it out between all of the banks. This should date from the 1970s when it was still called Master Charge, and it's priced at $155. The blue Kanawa you actually see less than the Amberina. They're asking $125. They do not know what that piece is, but it is a cool piece. And out of the early 70s is the simulated wood grain table with the patterning. I love the shape, $89.99. Cool 1950s leaping deer lamp. Haven't seen that one before, priced at $135. And we're going to head downstairs. I have found things downstairs in the past. One of the coolest things you're going to see in here is this really neat 1940s or 50s era neon sign from a Rexall. $4,500. Rexall is still big in Canada, but we don't have a lot of them in the States anymore. These stained glass windows came out of a Queen Anne home. Queen Anne is the neighborhood on the big hill between here and downtown Seattle. So those should date back no later than the 1920s. 400 each or 700 for the pair is actually pretty good. And then, of course, Spuds MacKenzie. And I like these Carnival umbrellas, the metal ones out of the 50s. Those have great color. Half off Tom Brady. I bet the people who signed him to that long contract wish they could get half off. His dealer's got some fun older stuff. The lamp is only $45, but I really like Lorraine, the lingerie model. This looks like something from about 1950. It's a hard plastic and rubber with a little crackling. Wish I could find the price. I could get interested in having this in this display. Now, this guy would be cool if you could fix him. His neck's been broken. He's been re-glued and repainted, but he's supposed to have a brown piece of glass behind him and generally frosted with the color, so you'd have to get that. A few turquoise rings in here. I like the turquoise and coral on the upper right there. Lots of pinbacks. Nowhere else but Asheville. Poor Asheville. I hope they're recovering. A Shaper game toy. For 6 years old and up, this is a basketball toy from the 1970s called Super Touch. Still in the original wrap, so I guess whoever got it didn't like it very much. But somebody could like it now because it's mint. Letterpress letters for typesetting. You can spell your name or whatever else you need. There's the number 3. $3 each or 4 for 10. Various Mickey Mouse things. Again, some retro, some vintage. The radio is vintage from the 70s. As is the little shirt with the plasticky center there. And then this is much older. This is wooden. It's Fisher-Price. Fisher-Price mainly did educational toys. Mickey Mouse was a little bit of a departure for them, but they came out in 1931 and they needed Mickey Mouse, as did everybody, to keep them in business. Ah, yes, my Seattle Sounders soccer season has just started. These are big, chunky rings they gave out the last time they won the MLS Cup. $50 for the punch card set. That's about what they go for. A bit of a pinup there. You actually, back in the day, only paid 2 cents. And if you poked out the right one, you get a free pack of cigarettes. Seagram's probably did more plastic, fantastic advertising pieces in the late 60s than just about anybody. You see the salt and pepper shakers a lot. Seagram's and Be Sure, Crown 7. Nice little mixer there for $15. This composition doll is so stiff looking, I almost think she was a store display. She's in perfect condition. As is the Heidelberg beer advertising guy with the mug. That is a good piece there. Heidelberg is a Northwest brand made in Tacoma, Washington. And then underneath that, you have this cigar cutter with the guy thumbing his nose at you. A denim trash can with a butterfly on it right out of the 70s. Along with the sneak version of the roller skates from the roller disco period. Seattle had a great run with basketball. The Sonics were here for, over 30 years. Here we have some signed uniforms. There are some in-city flea markets happening. We're getting into that time of year. Spider-Man and the Hulk, a lot of these are in the $30 to $75 range. Some vintage single-stitch tees from the Pan Am Masters games in the 70s. From a Sammy Hagar concert that looks like 80s. Ren and Stimpy. This space has some more retro lighting. A cute little table here too, a form of tambourette from the 19-teens for $60. Moroccan style lamp from the 70s. And these tulips, of course, from the 80s, priced at $135. And Cats R Us, these flat cats are a 1990s version made based on something from the 1700s, believe it or not. But the one that grabs my attention the most is this. This is a Rose Lane sparkler with the rhinestone eyes from the 60s. And it's tall compared to most of them. Orange slag glass. That's a pretty color. And around there are various postcards. These look pretty miscellaneous. There's chromolith with the Kodachrome color. This one is a linen era. You can tell because look at the texturing. When you move it in the light, you see where it's got a little bit of a texture to it. That's why they call those linens. Pre-linens are ones like this that have no texture at all. Seattle grunge fashion, 1990s and forever. The weather here definitely makes this a look that never goes out of style. I think my high school pictures pretty much resemble this. Cups and saucers are finding their way into vintage stores with younger people because a lot of younger people are using these for bridal showers and that sort of thing. The chintz is probably the deal here at $20. This is Japanese chintz, based on the English chintz in the same era. This is a 1980s or 90s black catfish bowl. The original ones were done by Camark back in the 30s, and they're worth a pretty penny. I like this. In front of the 1980s Bonnie ceramic flamingo frame is this Alexandrite dog, $28. Lavender in one kind of light, blue in another kind of light. This is another fun color changing thing that is interesting in the same way uranium glass is. Costa sunflower. This is right before Costa and Boda merge in the 1970s. Nice candle holder for $38. Green sprout. The Jolly Green Giants cohort. A phone made for him in the 1970s and 80s, along with the Raid Bug and Bugs Bunny. There's a couple more Rose Lane sparklers in the sizes we're more used to seeing. A Fenton blue cat in the middle. And then look at this. This is Figaro by Brayton Laguna. All of the Figaro figures. These are from the 1940s and 50s. They have them priced around $85 each. $42 on this. We see this one certainly a lot more than the Drunken Top Hat Men, so I'm liking the decision to get that piece. This is the Turner with the egrets, and this one is hand-painted with the swans. $45 each on the Avon ladies suitcases from around 1970. Only $25 each on the two nesting tables. $85 for all these store displays for Gillette and other blades. They also have a bunch of corkscrews, pre-prohibition as well as post, $25 each. This is Metlock's Antique Grape. They just took the color out of their fruit line and did it as a plainware, which is good because it's lower in lead that way, about 1970. Another beer guy from a tavern, a chalkware Pfeiffer. $85 is about the right price on that. And some 1920s metal work. I like the New Haven clock quite a bit. And we have various still banks, elephants, buildings, lions, cool stuff. Well, it's been a lot of fun coming back to Fremont Vintage Mall. Found a few things, always do. It's interesting shopping in a mall that's more retro-oriented because if you know what the old stuff is, you can find a bargain. And now we're going to drive back past the Seattle Sculpture Park where the Calder is and look at my space at Lander. We are ready for the sale. Everything is going to be 20% off, and so I just jammed it in here. I brought these bar stools all the way from Florida. I still have a bunch of Blue Heaven. I brought in that really cool Whitco piece that I found in Illinois. This is really fun. Back in the 60s, if you didn't want to pay for a needed Collins purse, you could get the jewel tone handbag kit and make it yourself. My grandmother did a few of those. Up here we have a lot of springy colors and the Anthony mushroom. I brought this working 1980s Japanese slot machine. That is just really fun, as well as these big Kuan Yin figures. Added even more Sasha Prostov, and a fun piece of Dorsey Thorpe. The New York World's Fair tray, I added some Seattle World's Fair stuff too. Very cute Mexican fresh group. Brought in some acro agate. Most of these are custard glass, which means they are uranium glass and will glow under a black light. And a lot of people don't know that about acro, so it's a chance to add to your black light collection. Glass bird from Italy there. I had another one and it sold right away. I've always liked these supers, the soup bowls that stack. Interesting piece of Hager, the shell planter back there. Corky Pig is new. This is a San Diego artist who paints with his fingernail. Brought in 2 pieces of Fenton uranium, the peacock vases. I haven't had either of those for a while. One in the lime green custard and one in the regular custard. And I mean, we've got furniture stacked on furniture. I'm hoping some of that will sell during the sale, although I've loaded it down with so many fun smalls that hopefully they'll sell first, including a bunch of swung vases. I did sell one already, but I've got a couple of really big ones, the blue reeded on the left and the amber Fayette glass. It's actually got its sticker up in the top here somewhere, if I can find it. There it is. A couple different neon pieces. I have one chalet piece left, and there it is. Just got this Blanco piece recently from the early 60s. This is really fun. Hanging macrame. I got this in Colorado, and it actually fit in here, which was pretty great, along with a Miller Beer pool table light with the original box. This is signed by a bunch of the stars of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. It is real, from about 1980. I added more books, more paper. I like to have a lot of ephemera because people really enjoy it, and you can get a lot in a small space. And if I get really serious about it, I could really cram quite a lot in here if I displayed it differently. Right now I have it all spread out neatly. I have a few more Constance and Gwyneth Little mysteries, along with some other fun writers, and some children's stuff, and bookends to match. This is a Pacific stoneware piece you don't see very often. That was Bennett Welsh out of Portland who designed that. I brought in a bunch of playing cards from a collection I got. This picture is hand-painted enamel in a frame, which I think is pretty neat. Asking $100 on that. Pan Am bag from the 60s. It's still winter here in Seattle, so we're leaving the snowshoes. Somebody told me they think this might be Susie Cooper, in which case I got a great deal on it, and so will the next person because I only have it priced at about $30. I also just brought in this really great umbrella stand. I'm surprised I still have this Amphora owl lamp, but maybe this is the sale that will make it go. Jameson's in California didn't make a lot of stuff, but the fish flower frog is one of their better pieces. And then I set up a little boudoir area. Brought in this neat myrtlewood piece that I got in Oregon, where myrtlewood is from. And it is a barometer and weather center. Next to this Italian heavy ceramic piece from about 1970. Got a couple of Eichel paperweights, along with some perfume bottles. And a couple of pieces of celluloid. I love the Victorian woman in the back there. And then this was a necktie box. The duck is Waterford. There's another Eichel. And another piece of acro agate. The pink vase is Shawnee. And up here, we have a bunch of little Blanco pinch tumblers and other tumbler sets. Some fun Art Deco revival pieces. And this feather picture, which I just brought in. Up here, well, we had a few holes where we'd sold some stuff. So I brought in these lawnware lamps that I got in Arizona. This is one of the better Royal Dalton pieces I've seen in a figural lately. It is Capricorn, and I love that it's pure white. A larger agro agate planter, a trunk vase, some Varga calendar prints. We have more of those to bring in here when we have time. But I think we've got it looking pretty full. And we even have a disco ball. On the front shelf, we have an hourglass that we added. Another Pacific stoneware piece, this wine decanter. a very handsome Tantalus with the 4 crystal bottles from England from about 1910. Several pieces of acro agate on this shelf. Spring's just around the corner after all. The owl plate is Lalique. Brought in all of the Seattle World spare tumblers that I found in other parts of the country that needed to come back here, along with some Russell Wright. We've actually sold a few pieces of that already. The ice bucket came from Albuquerque. And we finally added another shelf in here, so we are really maxing out the space. And most spaces, including mine, will be 20% off.
If you enjoyed this video, check out this one. Also, click thumbs up to like this video and check the description for information about our Patreon, our memberships. We've got a lot of different levels with different perks and bonus videos and early content. Also, please do check out our website, theantiquenomad.com, for appraisal help. And we'll see you again for more adventures in the antique and vintage community soon. Bye for now.